your phones away for a while, and let's just see where that takes us. And let's just see if we can make it the least bit interesting. And if you're really lucky, I am dreadful at telling jokes. I have one or two jokes. If you're not good, I'll tell you one or two of those jokes. If you are good, you'll be blessed, and that will never happen. So I'll bring my first guest on, Mark Reid. Please come. Thank you. And I thought, as a novelty, what we might do is ask somebody else in the audience to join us for a little while. And we might just hot seat that. You've got a lovely smile. You may well be the first person on. So just be careful. Yeah, because you're smiling, you won't. I won't pick on you because you were smiling. Anybody who looks miserable, they're the ones. Yeah, look, that gentleman in the back there. See him? He's smiling like mad now because he doesn't want to come up here. He's got a big, broad grin, and I like him very much. Yeah. So I'll introduce Mark in a moment when Dr. Abdulla comes, if he does come. Let's just see where we're going. Hands up, how many people here are teachers or were teachers? That's brilliant. Good. So you will be kindly and thoughtful, and just imagine you're here as well, which is lovely. How many of you are principals with an ALS? Fantastic. And how many of you have principals with an LES? All of you, I hope. Good. And I hope that bit stays true. And that's the bit sometimes that we let go if we're not careful, because we get into different places. So I thought maybe we'll just talk a little bit about your values. How many people live in the UAE? Okay. How many people enjoy living in the UAE? Look at that. So where else have you lived, sir? Singapore. Where else? Korea? Where? New Zealand. Anybody else got any other countries that we've got here? Yes? Switzerland. And where are you from, madam? Ireland. And you notice I said madam because I can assure you this is Kate McKeever and she is a madam. So I've got her, the reason I'm asking her the question. So, and where are you from, sorry?
I'm from Australia.
Australia. You can't have everything, really, you can't. I was in Australia just recently, in Sydney. It's a lovely place and lovely friend. And Perth, the other side, even more delightful. Ah, Dr. Karam, we're warming up without you. Please, come on in.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you, Dr. Karam. Thank you very much indeed. No, that's really good of you to come. So, this is a delightful audience. Have you noticed, first of all, because you're so driven about well-being, they have put away their phones. You know, when we sit, that lady's taking a photo of you, which is fine. You're allowed to take a photo of it.
Yeah, I know her.
You know. You're not allowed to get your sister, or your mother, or other people to take a photo of you. That's not allowed. This is a lovely audience. They've already been very kind to me, and they've listened to me, even though I had nothing of any importance to say. But I'm going to introduce the two of you if I can. So, this is Dr. Abdulla Al Karam. He is probably one of the most hands-on people I know. He is the chair of the Board of Governors and the Director General of the Knowledge and Human Development Authority. So a really key person here in the Middle East and a key person in the UAE. He is responsible for the primary schools, the nurseries, the secondary schools, the universities, the training institutions, and hands up how many people are principals and teachers in schools in the UAE for which Dr. Abdulla Al Karam is responsible. So, these are your subjects there. So, no pressure. No pressure. And then we have Mark Reid, who joins us. He's a Canadian musician. Now, let me read this to you, because he's a leader in Canada's music education community. He is currently an educational technology consultant in British Columbia. He's a curriculum coordinator and music education strategy lead at British Columbia Ministry of Education, a past president of the Canadian Music Educators Association. He was a finalist in the 2015 Global Teacher Prize, and he's just been named a Qudwa Fellow in Abu Dhabi. So between these two people, they are pretty incredible people. And it's nice of us to have their company. And I've got a few questions to ask them. We have got an interpreter at the back. But before we started, although this is going to be conducted in English, Is there something you want to say to the Arabic guests amongst our audience in Arabic? I just thought it would be a nice thing for you to give them a message.
Well, how many Arabic speaking?
Yeah, you see, quite a few.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salam alaikum. That's it.
Short and sweet.
It's short and sweet. So, I'm going to start, if I may, Dr. Karam, with you. You went undercover as a teaching assistant, and you spent a whole day working in schools with children. What did you learn from that experience, and why did you do it?
2 minutes?
2 questions. No.
Okay.
What did you learn, and why did you do it? See, I'm not very good at this job. I realize I'd asked 2 questions in one. That's terrible. You shouldn't do that.
Why did I do it? It's actually started here a year ago. I was very inspired by the work that is happening at this conference, and the reward or the whole idea about putting the best teachers in the world on the stage and rewarding them. So one of the things that I was supposed to be speaking last year in one of the tents here, and said, what can I do? So I thought about personal contribution to become a teacher assistant once a week for an hour or so, but was mainly driven because of what's coming out through research right now about the importance of empathy. And I think one thing that also led us to that was very funny, because we had many tweets when we had a lot of rain last year, and most of these tweets was about taking the day off. I don't know if you remember.
Yes.
And we have somebody smart in our team says, yeah, you can take the day off if you are made of sugar and you will melt in the rain. But funny that actually teachers were asking for the day off, and this is when we realized that teaching is a very, very stressful job. Mind you, it's a lonely job. So I took on the task of trying to be there and help and learn. And it has been an interesting journey. I've probably done about 25 of those sessions. I mean, I wish I had done more. But each and every one of them were interesting. And I think I try to, as much as possible, to go to sessions that are not your usual, teaching assistant. And I mean, they varied from different things. My first one was 5 minutes into the session, the fire alarm went off. Was not a good start. So we thought, okay, let's get an evacuation going. So my CVs are getting bigger by every time I go, because I'm acquiring different skills in every session. And they were all interesting. And I think to answer your first question is, in one of the sessions I went to, I think it was about 4 years old, and the teacher asked me to assist her, because she was about to teach the kids where colors come from, right? So we had, 4 kids, and then she asked all the kids where the colors come from. And everybody in the class says, the color comes from the rainbow. And then we had to do some work with fruits and flowers to actually show them, no, it's coming from the fruits and the flowers and whatnot. So in my little group, and even after we finished the session, I said, so where do you think the colors come from? They kept saying, it comes from the rainbow. So it got me to think, actually, maybe we have to listen to them. Maybe they know something we don't know. So my answer to your first question was, actually, it gets so much better with time, because I start walking to a classroom and not seeing 20 kids. I start seeing 20 teachers. And the minute I start listening and not trying to be a teacher assistant, but be maybe a student assistant, this is where the learning that I've seen the most of it. And I've enjoyed being there, actually.
Thank you, Dr. Eric. Thank you very much indeed. Mark, there you go. We need feedback too, because it can be quite nerve-wracking when you're up here and you're looking you all do look very smart, I have to say. Very, very smart. But you're smiling, and it makes a big difference. So, Mark, why did you become a teacher?
I'm the child of 2 teachers.
Okay.
So I think many people here who are working in the education profession, we often have some sort of influential educator in our lives. In this case, it was my parents. And I found that just watching what they were doing was quite exciting. And as I was moving through the school system, I got to the first time that I had a band class, and I'm a music teacher. And so here I am in this band class, and my teacher, also named Mr. Reid, but no relation, he started to explain things to us and to engage us, and I recognized that in this moment, the teacher and all the students were doing the exact same thing for the exact same purpose at the exact same time. And it was only in that one classroom experience that I was having that sort of feeling. And so it became really clear at age 12 that I was going to become a teacher. That's what I wanted to do. I was an early adopter in my own career and made it clear that that's what I wanted to do. I started to recognize as I moved into high school that there was a really key philosophical perspective that one teacher was delivering, and that was that if a particular task doesn't require a degree in music education, a student can do it. So the feeling of shared responsibility and that learning experience in the music program was so engaging that just further galvanized, this is what I want to do, and started to get me thinking about how I want to do it, which is, I think, something that when we start to get kids focused on how they want to live, how they want to be, if teachers are modeling certain behaviors, and empathy, I think, is such a fantastic one. When we model that, then we're showing students how to be in this world, whether it's in the microcosm of a classroom or it's how to be a citizen of the world.
And how long have you been a teacher?
This is my 15th year.
And are you enjoying it as much now as you did when you started?
I am. After a number of years, both in private and public education, moving to work at the ministry was a really fascinating change in my perspective. And I feel that every teacher on the planet should have to spend some form of time working in their ministry or authority or department of education, because they start to recognize that when systemic decisions are made, they're not necessarily personal in nature. And hopefully they become more personalized to match what's going on in our classrooms. But it's really about a very high level perspective about capacity building and opportunity. So having left the ministry, and now I'm in a position where I travel all across our province. And our province geographically is larger than all of the UAE. In fact, I think several Middle Eastern countries combined, we would still be a larger geographic jurisdiction. And yet we have schools from 5 students where you can only access with a float plane to 2,500. And we're going out as a team of 32 teachers in our program, going out to support teacher training and building capacity in schools. So I'm now seeing what's happening all across the province, and that is even more enriching.
Mark just mentioned system leadership and changing systems. Dr. Karam, how have your experiences recently brought you to change the education system here? What changes have you seen that you're bringing in?
Look, I mean, I think changing the education system is not something that you can do overnight, right? It's a big system. And as Mike said about decisions, when you take those decisions, you have to be aware that it's a large system and you have a legacy to it. And I think also it's not a system you want to experiment a lot with, and I think the appetite is not quite there like other industries. But I think as a regulator, we finding ourselves saying, look, maybe, okay, when did you do something right? When did you get it? You really get it when the system start self-regulating itself. So you don't need not to introduce more and more and more. And finding ourselves through the journey of the last 10 years, we're doing less of the regulations. Definitely the mass regulation, the one size fits all, definitely a whole lot less of that. Which basically a good sign is that, the market itself or the industry itself or the school themselves, in whatever perspective you look at, start being responsible and start taking accountability to them. So this is where I do feel that the change you bring forward is pretty much sustainable because it will continue to grow. So I think from that point of view, and then you start moving into a differentiated approach. because you cannot keep the same policies or forever. It has to change because there is so many changes in education, and the scene itself changes. So my point to this one is always is you as a regulator, you're only as good as when the schools start picking up those changes and start running with it. And you have to come in with a new set afterward.
I've worked in a number of systems around the world, but I've never seen children as happy as they are in our schools. And I remember when I first met you nearly 3 years ago, you were talking about happiness and well-being. And I didn't mean to be, and I tried not to be, but I was a little bit cynical. And I even used the word around, well, isn't that hedonistic? And actually you put me right nicely. But can you talk to us a little bit about how you've systemized and changed the way that we're looking at well-being with the child at the heart of that process?
You know, I think we experimented in ourselves as an organization. So we picked up the file about well-being more than 4 years ago. And as an organization, I said, we're not going to tell school about it. We're going to try it on ourselves first. And if it does work, then people will start saying, okay, can we do this? And we've seen it for the first hand how when we focused about well-being and happiness and resilience and grit, or whatever the terminology you have, once we start like measuring it and taking a scientific approach of improving it, our system gets better. If people felt better about themselves. And then eventually this found itself to the schools, and some of the schools have adopted well-being in different shapes and format. This year, November and December, we have run the first ever census about well-being and start asking the kids how happy they are. And I think we committed to do this for the next 5 years because we want to follow up that. And we say the segment between 10 to 12 years old because that's what maybe more focus at this point of time. So we run with the census this year for the first time. And for the first time, every school have almost 100-page report about all the answers to all the questions that was asked. But interestingly enough, when the result came out, and we were looking at the highlights of it, and you always look at what are the top 2-3 things that contribute to the happiness of the children. And they were somewhere like, top 3 things is kids are happier when they go to bed before 10 o'clock. We all know that. That's what our mother used to tell us. And then the kids are happier when they eat vegetables and fruits. Steve is here. But the number one contributor to their well-being and happiness is having close friends. Yeah. So when I was looking at this, I said, I think we get this wrong. We called it student well-being, but it is not. It's just simply a children well-being. It just they happen to be in a student. They just happen to play the role of a student because that's what they are doing while we're doing the census. So I think, and the other learning that I've got during this journey of the last 3 years with KHDA well-being and the students, we always say, okay, let's improve the education, and well-being should contribute to a better education. And I think it is the other way around. I think education should make your well-being higher. It should be contributing to your well-being, not the other way around to this one. So we've learned a lot, and this is only the first year. Next year we're planning to focus also or scale this to actually the teachers and ask about their well-being. But the trick part is there, and as we learned it from the students, we're not going to ask them as students, or we're not going to ask them as the teachers. We want to ask them as a human being how happy they are.
Well, I think it's remarkable that first of all you tested it on yourself first, because I think those of us who worked in other governments, that rarely happens. It just goes out there. So it's nice that actually you did it to yourselves first and then worked out what was going to work and what hasn't worked. And I think then that although I'm generally not in favor of tests or assessing all of the time, but actually that questionnaire is going to be really helpful in giving us a baseline and then moving forwards.
You see, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, assessment and assessment. But, as the saying goes, measure what you treasure, right? So, and we started doing that. But the thing about it is once the results were out, I think for a couple of days we brought the schools together and trying to give them some help how to read the data. But the immediate thing that we found out, schools start having a common language about well-being.
Yeah.
And what does it mean? What does it mean to be a positive education? And what is positive education and what's not positive education? So the terminology start being shared. But the interesting part is with this is schools immediately wanted to collaborate.
Yeah.
And you've seen that. So in the past, their collaboration or / competition was mainly on academic grounds or academic fronts. And I think with the well-being, and the funny part about it is, because we have the 17 education systems and we have 200 different nationalities, education might mean a different thing to where you come from or your background, the way you were educated. But with well-being, it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
Everybody wants their kids to be happy.
Yes, they do. Mark, you made it through to the last group of brilliant teachers, and that's quite something because there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of teachers. What were you looking for as a teacher in terms of how you could ensure that your children were happy? And lots of the people I know in this room would actually hope that their children were loved in school. It's a word that we don't use very often, but actually we want children to be loved in school and to feel at home. What insights do you have around what allows that to foster and flourish?
There's something that a certain phrase that I've carried with me that was delivered to me, I'm sure as a university student, that the kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
And that concept of care being the priority essentially establishes that this is a relational experience and that the relationship is going to enhance the entire learning experience. Without it, there's going to be an unstable learning environment that just, it's tenuous and it just will continue day to day until that relationship gets built. It can be such a challenge for my colleagues who, in an academic subject where you're the English teacher, you have a student for 1 year and that's it. And next year the student has another English teacher. I've had the privilege of teaching a student from grade 6 through to grade 12. And having that many years with a student, the counselors come to me for answers. The parents come to me for answers. I just the same go to them for some answers as well. But having that time to build that relationship is really, really quite interesting. And in a way, I'm doing my own sort of day-to-day research very similar to what you're describing. And I'm able to track and monitor how a student's doing, where they're at emotionally and socially as they're working through things. So I find that very interesting, the role of an arts educator that in how we're able to see a student for a longer period of time. It really is quite it's very informative and insightful.
I was reminded when you started speaking then that a guy called Alistair Smith once said to me a long, long time ago that teaching is a little bit like old-fashioned banking. In the old days, and I'm older than all of you, including you, Dr. Karam, by about a century, I'm reminded that really in old-fashioned banking, you had to make lots and lots of deposits before you could make a withdrawal. And I think teaching is about that. You have to invest in the children in many ways. What you then went on to say was, as an arts educator, how important are the arts?
I mean, they're critical. I will say publicly, I've said it before, I'll say it many times, I don't believe in STEM education. And I know a lot of people then say, oh, he's going to follow that up with, he's a STEM to STEAM guy. No. Comprehensive education is what we're trying to provide for students. It's about the student and providing them with every opportunity through a number of subject areas. When we start to model a STEM program that gathers certain subjects together, even if it's STEAM, what we're saying is, especially in the STEAM model, that the arts are there to serve a creative learning need for science, tech, engineering, and math. Well, what if we mix in PE? What if we mix in social studies? What if we continue to mix in the entire learning experience so that they're really comprehensively enriched. I know that's not wildly popular these days. STEM is a hot approach, but I think about how I have colleagues, and Stephen even sitting in the front row as an example. He's taking a whole bunch of different ways of learning, a whole bunch of different concepts from different subject areas, and he's put them together into this beautifully integrated approach that is serving a ton of students in a scalable way. I think you would agree. So that, to me, that says something, that we, whether we're an arts educator or we're math or science, we all have an equal footing in raising up children that understand their world and see a future for themselves 2030 and beyond.
I'm still waiting to find a child who says to me, when they've come out of a maths lesson, that was one of the best plenaries I've ever really come across, you know? But they do tend to remember the time they went on stage, or the time they sang or acted or played a musical instrument. Dr. Karam, you're a sportsman, you're a runner. You have invited me once, I don't know if you remember, a long time ago to join you, but it was at 5 o'clock in the morning before, and I'm still asleep at 5 o'clock in the morning. Some would say I'm still asleep at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but I'll see you later. But you obviously enjoy physical exercise, you enjoy other parts of the arts. What's your view on this?
Look, I think with the sport and pretty much I like more of the outdoor sports, and it's not as much as the sport as much as being out there connecting to Mother Nature. I do feel it's natural for us to actually sometimes run on the ground and listen to the birds and see the sunset and the sunrise, you know. I mean, these are two, they define your day actually. This is how it starts and that's how it ends, you know. So I think a lot of my physical activity or sport activity has been there since I was a kid. That's all what we know. And actually back then we were kids. This is one of the reasons I was looking forward to go to the school so I can go play soccer. But was even back in then, it was too early in the day, so we used to don't have football back then. We used a lot of old socks and just put them together, and we used to play soccer with socks, a ball with socks. So it really it makes me happy because I do enjoy it, and I do enjoy the competition, but I do enjoy because most of the sports we do is team building. Okay. So, but I think the fact is, you know, some people might not enjoy that much sport, but sure they will enjoy other activities out there. I think my answer to it is, you know, you do whatever it takes for you to be out there and connect more with Mother Nature. And I think also change of the same, don't just go to the office or the schools all the time and that's it, you know. Have different things going on in your life in the same day. And I think you will find in one day you are better at sport. I mean, not every day you're good at sport, right? So I mean, you have a good day, sometimes you say it's not my day. So
I say that more times now than I used to.
Yeah. So, but I guess I mean there is a relationship between physical activities and happiness and joy you get out of that one, as much as, you know, activities about, you know, giving and volunteering. I mean, I think there is enough evidence out there. So I do feel education or schools or experience you go through that requires you to actually physically move and get your brain to think and interact with others, just generally makes you happier.
We heard Al Gore today talking about the fact that America had come out of the Paris Agreement on climate control. And he was also pointing out that actually they don't come out until one day after the next presidential race, so or run. So there's a chance there. You know, around the world, there is this movement towards populism. And it is the older populations who maybe don't have the qualifications and the education that are voting in some of the extremes around the world. We won't get too caught up on which countries. I don't want to place you in a difficult position. But around the world, the young are making informed, enlightened choices, and we have hope in the young. Can you just talk to us a little bit about the importance of global education?
See, I mean, I think when we talk about the young now, I mean, I lost track of the labels, Generation X and Y and millenniums and all of that. But what I found today with this generation that you are referring to, unlike previous generations, including ours and some of you here, we used to always look up for solutions. Always look up to whether our managers or our leaders or whatever, a problem, solve it for us. This generation is not. This generation does not look up, looks across. They feel so much responsible and so much accountable, and they know so much, and I think a lot has to do with also with the social media, because they feel connected to people across the globe. So if you put that in the perspective of how important global education, today education is global. I don't think it's local in that sense. And I think not only from the content point of view, but from knowing who is doing what, where to fight what. Okay, there is something is working there. What does that work for me? So I think this network that we've seen today, combined with learners who actually will seek help and assistance, not from above, neither from below, I think from across, what really define this generation that we're trying to educate.
Mark, you've got a young Prime Minister in Justin Trudeau, and actually you've got a remarkably good record as a country for refugees who come to your country and actually assimilate quicker than nearly any other country in the world, and then they go on to succeed in school rather than drop out. How is your country approaching global education? Obviously it's doing something right. There should be a clap from any Canadians in the group. I don't know if there are any, but they're doing a really good job here.
Well, the interesting thing is, as much as the world may perceive that we're doing something right now, a lot of that is informed by an extremely dark period in education and a very, very poor relationship with our Indigenous people. And a part of the Trudeau era style of politics, messaging of politics, is a realization that there has to be better relationships between everyone who lives within what we now refer to as Canada. Within those borders, there are Inuit people, there are Aboriginal people of many First Nations, and there are Métis. And so when you've got all of those people, and then you have Canadians of an immigrant background, myself included, and then you have Canadians of a refugee immigrant background, we really have a rich diversity. Our classrooms are these fantastic global education incubators.
Yes.
I grew up in a context where a community that was predominantly Caucasian. I now am working in a community. I mean, the last school that I was in was 85% not Caucasian. So I'm in the minority, and I had the opportunity out of that to recognize we all have so much to learn from one another. We have the opportunity to learn from mistakes we've made as a nation historically, and how to right those wrongs, and how to really look at what we're doing in our classrooms. In terms of our relationship with Indigenous people, we're working on reconciliation. And what I'm really finding is that in my classroom, I'm reconciling the differences and disparate views and learning from them. It's not about assimilation the same way. I think that it was interesting working actually in the Ministry of Education at the time when we recognized that there would be a large influx of refugees, and a strategy set out at the ministry level to ensure that there was a interdepartmental or interministerial approach, really understanding that at the ministry level, at a district level, there's other public services and NGOs that all need to be brought together so that there's a proper reception for people who are looking for a place to be, who don't currently have a place to be or have somewhere that they need to leave. And I think that just the general feeling of a welcoming nature in our schools, a welcoming nature of our system, and recognizing that we have some work to do in how we get along, that's not lost on a lot of people. It's not as easy as, we've got this, so come on along. We recognize we still have some learning to do, but we're willing to learn along with others and keep our doors open. I think that's a really critical piece.
A lady in the front row said she was from Australia. The gentleman there is from New Zealand. these are issues that are all around the room, aren't they, really, in all the different countries that we're in. And what they seem to need often is great leadership. And I'm not just saying this, but those of us who live here in the UAE know that Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum actually does provide incredible leadership here. The role of leadership, Dr. Karam, what does that play in defining a country?
I mean, you said it. It's very important, and I think we are very blessed. You know, as you said, with Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, is not just a leader, but is also a disruptor. I mean, if you think about the changes in the government for the last, let's take 3 years only, and said, who actually is thinking about having a minister for happiness, or a minister for the future, or now the minister for AI, or I mean, it is so much out there right now. Not to say we want happiness. No, we want happiness, and here is a ministerial, and here is a post, and this is what they will do. So it is not just about we will do this. I think also for us is as much as the government, you know, continue to do these things, but the government trying to disrupt itself. A year ago, the government and His Highness have asked every government department in Dubai to come up with an idea. I would come up with a set of ideas, but they will select one in your core business that no other government across the globe will dare to do for at least the next 10 years. And hence the 10X project. And what it's saying is here is most of the disruption we see around the world, their number one challenge is the government. Whether Airbnb and Uber and whatnot. It's always the government are. And here we're saying no. And under His Highness leadership said, no, we as a government should ask for disruption and allow businesses or enterprise to actually hack into our own regulations, so there is no excuse not to disrupt the system. And I think this is very important to us, because this way we just pass on the years. We don't have to wait for 10 years for somebody else's to do. And it's not always about having the biggest or the tallest. I mean, we've been there, we've done that. I think it's about having the best. So I do feel with this leadership that's always out there and wanting the best for its people. And we've seen the examples, I mean, throughout the 10X and other projects that, and you know what, sometimes I find it ironic, because you live around different parts of the world, right? And you always said, the people said, we want this and we want this, and sometimes the government don't listen to what you want, and they end up going to the street and doing whatever they do. Here, actually, we have a problem, but it's the other way around. Is our leaders are asking us for things we are not catching up with what they want. You said it yourself. I was talking about happiness to you 3 years ago, and what you were saying?
I was cynical. Well, I'm generally a happy person, but I wasn't sure about whether we needed a minister.
His Highness asked about that 5-6 years ago, and he said, I want to have the happiest people living here.
Yeah.
Right. So, unlike, I think it's so much that it's so out there, and we're trying as much as possible to catch up, which is actually very interesting, because this government, the rate of the change is so, in the government, it's so fast, and if you are not keeping up in your prospective businesses or department, you'll be out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this is the race that the leadership is igniting, saying you catch up. And once you're there and you think you're there, well, there's another thing. There is no week passes by in UAE, in Dubai, that there is not something new. And most of the time, it's not something that you expect, actually. Oh, that was expected, actually not.
No.
So I think we're fortunate with this leadership, that it is futuristic, it's disruptive, but most important, in his book when he said, the number one purpose or the role of every government is to make its people happy. And I think this is a very strong statement, because the belief that it all starts with happiness. It doesn't end with happiness, it starts with happiness. And if we translate that to everything we do, productivity and everything else will come as a subsequent of bringing happiness to the front. So again, I think leadership, we're very blessed in UAE and in Dubai with that, and I hope there is more learning to the rest of the world.
Thank you. Now we will have an opportunity for asking questions in the audience as well. Hands were straight up there. So I think we've got a microphone. Thank you very much indeed. And there's a lady in the front row here, second from the left, who was the very first one with a hand up. So I've got to go with the very... As a second from the left was first, and then you were straight afterwards.
مرحبا دكتور كيف الحال? Okay, my question is, when you did the happiness study for the schools, and you know there are 19 education systems in all the schools in Dubai, like the Pakistani, Indian, British, IB. So were the replies different? Like, would you get a different reply from the schools that are doing the Indian system and the school that are doing the IB system, or the replies were like similar?
Thank you, Saad, for that question. I think, look, happiness would mean a different thing to different people, but in generally, you will get more or less the same answer, because now we're still dealing, and we're talking about kids here. You know, maybe if I ask you, as an adult has gone, you might think about happiness and correlation to norms, to religion, to whatever. But kids at this age, they're not thinking that way. They think generally about being happy. I think, and even when kids, it could be what make that, if you fix everything, if you fix nationality, religion, age, if you fix all of that, you will still find that this kid, if everything is constant with the other kid, what make him or her happy is different. But I think it is that the question that you ask, what makes them happy that you can do more of? Or the thing that makes them less happy and you can do less of. And I think this is more important than, yeah, there will be some differences between here, but the majority, I think they know what makes them happy.
I was once in a meeting with, and I'm not just saying this I was once in a group meeting with Nelson Mandela, and this black lady jumped up and said, Nelson, do you have a message for the black women of Sparkbrook? And all her friends around her were obviously black women from Sparkbrook, and they all cheered, you know, and Nelson Mandela said, in only the way that he could, yes, I do have a message for the black women of Sparkbrook, but it's the same message for the brown women of Sparkbrook, and the same message for the yellow women of Sparkbrook. Well, by then, we were all clapping and shouting, you know, because actually what we found with that, the outcomes are that it's been reasonably similar across the ethnic groups. What's been a bit of a disappointment for me, though, was that almost a quarter of the children, I think it was 23%, didn't feel that they had somebody in school that they could actually go and talk to. That worried me. What worried me more was it was a slightly worse figure for children who felt that they had somebody at home they could talk to. So actually you had to worry about where those children were getting somebody to talk to. At the time in their lives, you know, you go through adolescence, you need other people to talk to. And actually it's their friendship groups, which is exactly the point you were making, which is so important for their happiness. And we've got a job to do about educating parents as well as children in that full partnership.
Can I just comment on that?
Please.
There's some great research out of the University of British Columbia by Shona at Treichel about school connectedness. And it ties into some concepts from First People's Principles of Learning, but really essentially says that if there are two positive points of contact with adults while a student is in their elementary years, yes, that when they transition to high school, they are more likely to seek out a positive point of contact right away. Yes. Whether it's an overt or a conscious effort, they're going to do it. If it's one point in elementary school, it becomes a little more tenuous in high school. And if there has been no positive relationship built with an adult while they're in elementary school, the likelihood of them ever finding that in high school or being successful by many measures in high school, that's all going to be undermined. it's great research. It was really challenging one day to have a child walk into my room and tell me that his mom was the researcher. And I immediately felt, okay, I need to build a relationship with you, and I need to make sure that there's that point of contact. But I think it speaks to that need for there to be care and empathy and relationships built in elementary school. If academic performance and accountability measures are put as the top priority, we're not serving children K to 12. We're serving them in that moment for that one specific outcome-based purpose. Something bigger gets lost.
Thank you very much. Thank you. There you go. Well done. We've got that lady there, and then we'll go to the gentleman over there.
Okay, I try to make it as short, although it's a little bit of a systemic question. My name is Ulrike. I'm from Germany. I'm teacher trainer here in the UAE and for school improvement, mainly working in and out of the KHDA, and thankfully very much supported by the KHDA. I was asked from teachers, actually, and you have partly answered this already. Now, we have seen the wellness report on the students, and obviously wellness of students is connected with wellness of teachers. Now, you will have your questionnaire coming out for teachers, what you said. But how much of responsibility does the KHDA and the Inspection Bureau by themselves take for the wellness of the teachers? Because many teachers actually feel extremely under pressure, especially during the time of inspections, and they are, especially in this time, they are very far from feeling well. Yeah, thank you.
Look, I think
you're answering that one, Dr.
Yeah,
Karam.
no, it's fine. I think, look, we all come under the pressure, whether the kids through the exams or we as an employee, or we're all under pressure somehow. I think when next year we will run the census for the teacher, as I said, we are not going to ask them as a teacher, we're going to ask them as a human being. And that's very important, because we do care. And that's why we are asking. As far as the pressure points, I think those who are mentally strong and they're high in their well-being and happy, they go through any pressure in life.
But you said before that now the movement from the KHDA will be regarded more into the direction of outcome, like it is in Ofsted now in Great Britain, and there the teachers are pretty much suffering at the moment. So many teachers are just afraid that we will move to the same direction, and actually I hope you can tell us no. We are not.
Well, I'll come in and answer that one, and then we'll go over there. And that is because actually there's a huge difference between the way the DSIB operates and the way that the institution you're talking about there operates. I'm sure that both want children to be at the heart of what they're doing, but actually working with DSIB, working with the Ministry of Education, the FEZ, and ADEC in Abu Dhabi, you see a difference in the way that they're actually approaching it. They are concerned for children's health and well-being. They are concerned for teachers' health and well-being. And there are interactions with us about how that might improve. But I don't see it traveling the way that Ofsted did. I see them using other regulatory bodies around the world and taking advice from them. But actually, I think the expectation is that we don't go down that road. Correct, Dr. Karam?
100%.
Good. We'll let that gentleman come in. We're on 3 minutes and 22 seconds.
Hello.
Hello.
I am Wahid Jubran from Palestine. Thanks a lot, Dr. Abdullah, for stressing the importance of well-being. And let me say something before asking my question. Well-being, it is a process and outcome. It is both. And to achieve the outcome, you need to practice the process and to learn the process, because well-being, it is holistic, it is emotional, it is mental, it is physical, it is spiritual. So my question is, do you have in your system how to support the students to learn for well-being, learning for well-being? Because well-being, it's not something that you impose, or it's not something that you provide. Sometimes something that you need to learn to achieve your well-being. Is there something in the system to support the students and to focus on learning for well-being? Thanks.
Look, I think people will argue this point. Is it something that you're born with, or is something that you can teach? I do believe that you can teach everything. You can teach everything, and you can use a systematic approach to it. Kids in generally are born happy. We know it. You see them, they are very happy, right? As they go into the system, they tend to start declining. And the census I referred to, Chris, showed us that kids, because we sense from age 10, 11, 12, at 10, they are much happier than 12. Start dropping down. So I do think that it's not our system that will teach. There will be different systems, different people around in this room, out there, that will work with the schools in terms of either embed that in the curriculum or have it an extra or before or after. But the fact that kids naturally are happy, what I think we need to start looking at that, start getting away from the thing that makes them less happy. We all know kids are more stressed when there is exams. And we focus so much on exams and assessment and assessment and assessment. I've been arguing the point that, no, this is not what we want our education system to be. We want the education system to prepare them for the test of life, not the life of the test that they've been going through. And if you see that, so I think the fact that how do we go about it, the approach, the methodology, I think it will vary from one school to another. There are different organizations, different coaches, different consultants. There are schools like Geelong Grammar School that do good things, you know. So I don't think it will be one. I hope it's not one curriculum followed by another exam or assessment for that. But I think the point is stressing on it, majoring it, and seeing what is working, and if you do this, will that make it higher or lower? It's a scientific process. But I do agree, it is teachable.
I'm sorry you're not going to come in for that one, Mark, but I will just remind you that children are born with only two fears. The first one is the act of falling. A toddler will go to the edge of something and fall off it, but they won't realize that. But there's the act of falling, which is if any of you are parents and you throw your little one in the air, they love that and they'll squeal with delight. But there's that act of falling. The other one is loud noises. All the other fears they end up with, I'm afraid we teach them. So if we can teach them those fears, we can unteach them too. I would like to take the opportunity, please, to thank Mark Reid, who has come to us from Canada. Thank you. Incredibly eloquent and really interesting points you made, Mark. Thank you very much indeed. And our lovable boss, I can see all the principals in around the room, our lovable boss, Dr. Karam. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And thank you. You didn't go to your phones. You listened intently and you made our job a lot easier because you saw that we loosened up as we got to know you. So thank you for smiling and showing your teeth so much of the time. Thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye.